Hi there, I'm Doy Santos, and you're on the cusp. So mga kaibigan, eto na uli tayo. We're in the middle of the campaign season and continuing to talk about the Senate race with Otso Diretso, the opposition slate, and Mabago Koto and Hukbong comprising the administration slates. And it really didn't take that long before the campaign turned dirty, right? On both sides. So, wow, what a week it's been. You've seen the Ocho Derecho candidates taking to jet skis in the South China Sea, waving flags and holding up posters saying, atin to, atin ang South China Sea. You've also had the president comparing penis sizes with Jim Paredes and the opposition at large, comparing the size of their manhood because Jim Paredes had a cyber sex video that was taped unbeknownst to him, leaked to the public through social media, and it led to a whole brouhaha. Jim Paredes is a Filipino singer back in the 80s with Apple Hiking Society and has been a very vocal, staunch critic of the president. And has, spoken of himself as a godly, God fearing Christian person. And so we've had this debate with a president who badmouths the Pope, curses God, and you know doesn't really care too much for organized institutional Catholicism. Okay, so we've had that. As if to make matters even worse, we've had other things crop up, right? Another issue that's been raised was the president's wealth, his family's wealth, and their alleged ties to the illegal drug trade. With a guy, an anonymous character named Bikoy, making such allegations. And then you had the special assistant, former special assistant to the president, Bong Go, who's part of the Mabago Koto lineup, just taking off his shirt now in front of the press gallery. So from shirt fronting to shirt stripping, things could not go any lower. One would hope, right? With the way things are, this campaign have been shaping up. And then, amidst all of this, new polling data that indicates that the two senators, Bam Aquino and Mar Rojas from Ocho Derecho, are actually at risk of dropping out of the Magic 12. The president's popularity soaring, as indicated by a different poll, seems to suggest that all the tirades against him for the illegal drug campaign, the yung tax reform that was supposedly the cause of inflation. Now inflation has gone back down to 3.5% or thereabouts with the Rice Tarification Act that was passed. So and also growth proceeding because of the infrastructure spending of the government thanks to the tax reforms. So all of this has been like an enormous exercise in political capital, with the president, spending political capital, risking his popularity on several measures, and the opposition trying to take advantage and exploit those issues. Those opportunistic approaches by the opposition seem to have come back to bite them and hurt them now, and they're in a dire situation of possibly facing a 12 to nothing rout in this election. All right. But when you think about it, is this election really all about? Um, what are we trying to determine here out of this election? What is it all about? Ang hirap intindihin ano? Kasi hindi na pinag-uusapan yung issue Hindi na pinag-uusapan yung plataforma, kundi yung mga personalidad Nagtitirahan na sila, they're hitting below the belt kung ano-anong ginagawa nila, mga gimmick, mga political, mga pang media mileage, no? Taking off your shirt, riding a jet ski, and so on. So nawala na yung purpose ng election. Why are we even having this election? What is it all about? Well, when you think about it, no, what is every election all about? What is the purpose of it? It's to determine, right, what what the role of the government should be in our lives. Ano ba? Para saan ba ang gobyerno? What is the appropriate role for government? That should be the question. Instead of talking about whether people have tattoos on their backs or whatnot, no. So what are the arguments on either side? So as I've said in the last episode, Otso Diretso's views are actually philosophically different from the administration's views. Because actually, when you try to answer this question, why does government exist? What is the role of government? There are several schools of thought, actually. So the first school of thought is that government exists to provide law and order, peace and order. You know? So without government, the reasoning goes, our society would simply descend into chaos. Ano? Magiging dog eat dog world na ang mundo, ano? Every man for himself. Patay kung patay. Wild wild west na kumbaga. Walang law and order kung walang gobyerno. In such a world, the ideal form of government would be an absolute dictatorship where the state becomes the entity that guarantees everybody's freedom and safety. People surrender their individual freedoms to the state in exchange for the protection that the state brings. Ano? So I wrote a piece a few weeks ago talking about this, where I said that the social contract that Duterte has formed with the Filipino people, ang pagkakaintindihan ng ng presidente dito sa ang pagkakaintindi niya dito sa kung ano ba ang tungkulin ng gobyerno sa ating buhay is based on the idea that the state must provide must create fear in the hearts of people so that they will obey the law, that so that they will obey a set of rules, and that and that they will not violate those rules or else risk severe punishment. That's what the whole drug war has been all about, really, when you think about it. Is the government saying to the people, the president, the state saying to the people, okay, kaya naming patuparin ang tungkulin namin, no, to provide law and order. Okay, bulok ang sistema ng hustisya sa ating bansa, kaya gagamit na lang kami ng ibang paraan, no? Para matanggal yung problema ng droga sa lipunan natin. Ano? So that's basically what they're trying to do and promote that idea. So if you think about it, for much of human history, this was really the role that government has played. All the way from the time of antiquity, the Roman period, they had dictators. The most famous one being Cincinnati, and the people of Rome during the time of war. They appointed a consul whom they named as dictator. Yun talagang title niya, dictador. And then it was his job to restore peace, to bring peace, to fight off the invaders, to prevent riots and looting from taking place within Rome, to establish order. And through much of Europe during the medieval period, all the way until the Enlightenment, that was the role of the state. You had a monarch who had absolute authority, who ruled by divine right and handed down power through their bloodline. and people owed their fealty to the sovereign, and in exchange, he protected them from the bandits, raiders, and invaders. If you think about the Vikings who came and raped and pillaged everywhere they went, um, the role of the king of England and of the kings in England at the time was to protect their people from these raiders, and in exchange for which they would collect a portion of the harvest, and provide an army to guarantee people's safety. So yun no. So kung naniniwala kayo na kailangan po natin sa ating lipunan ngayon is law and order, peace and order, then boboto kayo para kay Duterte and his candidates. No? On the other hand, if you feel na ang trabaho ng gobyerno sa ating lipunan is not only to guarantee safety but to guarantee the rights of citizens, to protect people's rights. If you believe that everybody has these inalienable rights, self-evident right to life, liberty, and property, then for you, the best form of government would be one that upheld your rights. What form of government would that be? Normally, it would be one that was where the judges were in charge, where we were ruled by judges, backed up by police power, to be able to enforce the decisions of the courts. So the state exists in order to uphold property rights and enforce contracts. In such a world, as I said, the ideal form would be a government run by judges. Now, in England in the 13th century, you had the Magna Carta, which limited the rights of kings to govern with absolute authority. This curbed the rights of nobles who owned property. This was curbed by the rights of nobles who owned property. Now, it's not surprising that in the current race with Otso Diretso, they've fielded a bunch of lawyers to run in their slate, no? These lawyers are known for being human rights lawyers. I'm talking about Shell Jokno, Erin Tanyada. They come from a line of famous lawyers who have tried to uphold people's rights. Then add to that Pilo Hilbay from the UP College of Law, and of course the vice president herself being a staunch advocate for indigenous and women's rights, no? And you'll find that that's basically what the Liberal Party is trying to promote and advocate for: people's individual freedoms, people's individual rights. So kung naniniwala kayo na ang tungkulin talaga ng gobyerno is to secure our individual freedoms, to protect our rights, then ang iboboto nyo ay yung mga kandidato ng Otso Diretso. Now, the third school of thought is that government exists to fulfill something called the will of the people. The will of the people. And this is done so that people will be free in order to pursue happiness, in the pursuit of happiness. Kanga, no? Sabi ni Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the US. Right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pinalitan niya yung property dun sa declaration nila, no, of independence sa US. So it's not just under this school of thought. Hindi lang yung mga may kaya, hindi lang yung mga may pera, yung mga may lupain, not just the propertied classes whose rights are protected in such a world, no? People within society may choose to reorder the way things are done to enhance their sense of personal well-being through public policy. And the ideal form of government, if you believe that this is the role of government to fulfill the people's will, would be a representative democracy. Ano? So that the will of the people is properly, the preference, the desires of the people is properly represented in government within the highest policy-making bodies of the land. Now, we may ask the question, Gan, how representative is our democracy? How reflective is it of the will of the people? And ang hirap sagutin yan eh. Because on the one hand, while we give people the right to vote for their representatives, we get them to choose the 12 senators that they want to represent them and the congressman who will represent their district. On the other hand, parang wala rin silang choice, ano, but to pick the same people over and over again. So I don't know how you would answer the question how representative our democracy is. Para sa akin, ano pa rin tayo, we're in a situation, a damaged democracy where kung may kaya ka, kung sikat ka, kung may tunog ang pangalan mo, okay? May pinagmanahan kang political name, no, sa magulang mo, then you can run for office and succeed. Pero kung wala kang ganon, isa ka lang ordinaryong mamamayan, ano, na you don't really have the right to challenge for public office. Ang hirap, ano? Ang hirap talaga. So, in that sense, parang ano pa rin tayo eh. We're sort of in living under not an autocracy but an aristocracy, an oligarchy or a plutarchy, where power is really concentrated in the hands of a few. Ano? But so if that's the case, then paano na tayo? How can we improve things, ano? Well, let me just put it this way. If you go around the world, people have and cultures have answered the question, what is the proper role of government, very differently, you know. In the English-speaking world of Great Britain and its former colonies, the US, Australia, Canada, Ireland, and so on, New Zealand, you'll find that their societies tend towards very limited government. The free market reigns, and with some basic social safety nets being provided to its citizens. In East Asia, Japan, South Korea, China, Taiwan, in the Confucian world of East Asia, the people that followed Confucius, influenced by Confucian teachings, there are very limited safety nets as well, and a more paternalistic role for government, and a willingness by people to limit their individual freedoms to achieve collective goals. So that's in East Asia. In Scandinavia and Northern Europe, there tends to be a consensus towards a more egalitarian society that ensures against the vagaries of the market through a corporatist model. So kung yung English-speaking medyo parang free market sila, Adam Smith, the invisible hand of the market, to improve the lives of people. East Asia is more statist in its approach. The state takes on a greater role. In Scandinavia, Northern Europe, they tend towards a corporatist model. Anong corporatist? Ibig sabihin, the three different groups in society, the state, industry, and society, they all collaborate. Kaya they incorporate each other. Kaya corporatist. They incorporate each other to decide how to govern. Nobody really has a superior or inferior role amongst the three. All right, so different regions, different places settle the question differently. When you go around and try to measure happiness of people, the happiness of people and relate that to which region in the world they belong to, one thing you will find, no, is that Scandinavia and Northern Europe countries tend to be the happiest places on earth. This is true, no? Even though they may not be the wealthiest, and we know from happiness, from the science of happiness, that money only helps in making you happier up to a certain point, beyond which additional money, additional income doesn't bring you additional joy in your life. It helps if you're really poor and you've got nothing to have some additional money, pero once you've reached a certain level, threshold of income, additional income doesn't really bring you additional happiness. So, you know, they discovered in Scandinavia that by providing a good safety net, which includes guaranteed rights to free, good quality education and health services, as well as employment security and income protection, this allows people the best chance to exercise their free will, which is highly correlated, studies have found, with happiness. And incidentally, in Scandinavia and Northern Europe, you will find the countries that score the best in terms of anti-corruption. They have the least corrupt governments when you go around the world. People don't feel the need to amass huge amounts of wealth to be happy. There is an egalitarian or an egalitarian society in these countries. All right, so, and when you ask them, when you look and see what form of government they've adopted in this region, you will generally find that all of them, bar none, have adopted some form of proportional representation under a parliamentary setup with a multi-party system. This is the format among representative democracies that ensures that voters' preferences are indeed best reflected in the composition of their lawmaking bodies. So, whereas in the English-speaking world, there's a winner-take-all system, where the person with the most number of votes wins the seat, winner take all. That's sometimes referred to as first past the post. The person who had the most votes wins. This leads to a very strong two-party setup in the US and other English-speaking countries. There are, of course, some exceptions to that rule, New Zealand being one of them. But generally, that's how they've set up. In East Asia, you find that most of them are one-party states. South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan started out that way and then have gradually become two-party states. China, Singapore, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos are still one-party states. And so they've settled the question, because there's this a more statist sort of confusion model of like an enlightened dictatorship. In Latin America, most countries tend to be presidential and proportional in their Congress voting, but Latin America also tends to swing between democracies and dictatorships, with presidents tending to acquire more executive power unchecked by parliament or the courts. And it doesn't really matter whether right or left leaning these states become. They have dictators from the right and dictators from the left. Corruption also tends to be high. And although there are some exceptions, like Costa Rica and Chile, these are generally exceptions rather than the rule. So, getting back to our Senate race, how can we guarantee that, the election of our senators guarantees the will of the people, that they become representative of the people's will, when in fact about a growing number of senators, we commented on this the last time, actually are there because of their celebrity status. It's becoming like an episode of Celebrity Apprentice now, the Senate, where people apply and try to show off their that they're politicians now capable of running the government. But in essence, what they are really are celebrities, who, like any other citizen, have the right, no, to run for public office. But their celebrity status gives them huge advantage. And when you couple that with their ability to spend money, and raise money because of their celebrity status, you will have a situation, that we see in our country today. And so the solution for this, as I hinted a while ago, would be for us to strengthen the party system, adopt a kind of proportional voting system like they do in most of Scandinavia, Northern Europe, in New Zealand, and even with the Senate in Australia. This is how they elect their senators. It's similar to the party list system that we are currently familiar with in the lower house. So what would happen if we converted the voting system for all 24 senators so that it's based on a proportional so the number of seats that they occupy is proportional to the total number of votes that they get, and where the order of preference or precedence, let's say a party gets 2 seats, the party basically has a list of a priority list that identifies who will have first priority in terms of occupying a seat when it becomes available. And by doing that, we would prevent or limit the situation now where only the big names, only the celebrities, lead in the polls because of their celebrity name. Pamilyar sa mga taong pangalan nila eh, kaya sila yung pinipili. But if we did it by voting for a party with a party list, then may chance pa yung mga hindi masyadong kilala, pero yung mga may abilidad at may kakayahan to occupy some of these seats, and to do it by developing policies and programs of government that address the needs of the people and answer the question, ano bang, what role do you want government to play in your life? And by catering to the desires and preferences of people, the will of the people, their desire for certain public goods, would be represented by their chosen representatives. So that, in essence, is the question before us today. How can we change our system? And we wouldn't need, by the way, to do this through an amendment to the Constitution. We wouldn't need cha-cha to make this change. The way the present Constitution works right now, or is phrased, it only says that the Senate shall be composed of 24 senators elected at large by qualified voters of the Philippines, as may be provided by law. No? As may be provided by law. So nothing prevents a law from being passed that would specify a different mode, a different way, by which we elected the 24 senators. So that would still be within our constitutional limits, and we wouldn't need to undertake cha-cha for this change. Ang daming proposals for cha-cha na napapag-usapan to change our system. But when you think about it, maybe simple changes such as this might help move the Philippines away from the personality-oriented type of elections that we have currently, and move us towards a more principle-based, more platform-oriented campaign where people talk about the issues, people debate the issues, and voters get to hear a different sort of campaign from the parties and their candidates compared to the one that we're getting now. So hanggang dun na lang po mga kaibigan. My final thought to this would be is that if we added onto that reform campaign changes to the way parties received money, if we provided opportunities for them to receive state sponsorship of political parties, state backing. So instead of receiving money from corporations, they could get their campaign expenses refunded up to a certain limit, and such, and things of that nature. Got special discounts, as we've already started to offer them, or get free airtime on public radio and public TV, give them public access. This could only work towards a better electoral system. So with that, I leave you today. Thank you for listening. It's been another episode of The Cusp. Catch all of our previous episodes with transcripts by going to our website, cusp-ph.blogspot.com. Subscribe to our Twitter feed @cusp_ph and our Facebook page @cusph. Be notified when a new episode comes out. And check us out on our YouTube channel as well, where this episode will soon be uploaded. This has been another edition of The Cusp. I'm Doy Santos. Thank you for listening, and catch you next time when we talk about another one of the burning issues on another edition of The Cusp.